Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot. We're getting into the weekend, so we're going to do the Friday reading today. We're looking at the energy across the weekend, and we're going to dig into a question along with it just to kind of see if we can bring that flavor into the reading. It'll be a general reading for this collective, so it may resonate with you, but it's definitely not going to resonate with everyone because it shouldn't. And, you know, if it does resonate with you, you might want to check out some of the other videos because they are very much connected. And I know I say that in the beginning of each of the videos, but everyone has their first time that they see the video. And so they should absolutely get that information because these readings are a lot more connected than I really expected them to be, I guess. I'll say that when I first came out here a little over a year ago. So we're going to look into what's happening for the weekend. First thing that we'll do is get just kind of a feel for what's going on with the energy. Yesterday was, when we did the soulmate snapshot, it was an interesting energy. We have the Eight of Wands today. This is the energy of motion. This is what I was curious about. So if you saw yesterday's soulmate snapshot, which those are just quick, they don't have an extended, we don't dig in too deep to anything, but it was this energy of them feeling compelled to move your direction. And this is the energy of movement, of communication. Eight of Wands can be a very communicative card. It's got a strong feel of in motion to it. So remember yesterday, I think the card that came out like at the top was the Six of Swords, but in reverse. And that was about things not really slowing down. There was a lot of like noise in each other's minds about one another. And so this is the energy of doing something. There's a lot of movement here. I guess, you know, today's question is about their awareness. So this is interesting. The question that I want to ask today, you know, I said I was going to look into what you guys sent me, and I have a list of running questions. This one is, I got a lot along the lines of this question, and it feels like the right one to ask for the weekend. The question that I'm going to ask is about their awareness. And so what a person wrote to me, one of the viewers wrote, are they even aware of what they're doing in terms of recognizing this inconsistent, confusing behavior and the impact it's having? And do they care? So that's what we're going to look into with the context of what do we know for this weekend and how well are they aware of kind of what's going on, how they feel about that. So that's going to be our question. So looking at just the emotional backdrop, we see a lot of movement. There is a sense of confidence here. It's a sense, and this is energy that's between you, but it feels like it's more originating from them and kind of moving your direction. And you may be feeling it as something that is spiraling and climbing and getting bigger. You know, one of you had written to me a couple days ago about feeling anger, and you know, I've heard this one from a couple of you. So yes, the answer is there are definitely other people that are feeling anger that's coming from this person, and in some cases directed toward that third party. You know, sometimes it's not directed toward the third party. Sometimes it's just they're having a bad day. So this is energy of strength. I'm especially drawn to this tail and the spiraling kind of the tail. And then we've got the moon. It's not necessarily going to be clear why you're feeling these things. It's not necessarily clear to them why they're moving the direction that they're moving, but there is a feeling of movement and confidence and strength around it. So the strength card is, as I always say, not happening in a vacuum. It's something that is, you know, it's whether or not the fear or the strength is winning out at any given time. Here we're seeing the strength is in this weekend's energy. The Ace of Pentacles is coming out in the reverse today, saying that there's some fear around going through an open door. This is interesting because it came out yesterday in the upright saying this was a good day, or it was a good energy in which to open doors or walk through a door. So there's some resistance around walking through a door. There's a desire to want to keep some kind of peace, keep some kind of balance with this Two of Pentacles. Again, this feels like it's primarily coming from them, although I'm not saying that you're looking to disrupt a bunch of peace or anything. One thing that I will say is this is not a person who, if they're moving your direction, and they may be with that Eight of Wands energy, if they're moving your direction, you may be, you might have to be careful that they may not be bringing a healed version of themselves. We see this message periodically that if they're moving your direction, it's kind of probably too early in their healing process for them to do so with much success. But the thing is, some of you, as you're going through this healing process, they're going to be able to resist the urge to reach out when it arises. But when they talk to you, they're likely to mention, I've thought about reaching out to you multiple times, and they're going to mean that. That's the thing. Some of them are going to... I have this feeling of like a drunk text or a drunk dial, and I'm not saying everybody's drinking, just it's that vibe. It's that for whatever reason their inhibitions are down and they reach out, or they friend you, or they unblock you, or whatever the concept comes down to as many different approaches as there are people watching this. And as I've mentioned in the past, you know, some of you are sitting across the room from this person and just being incredibly emotionally shut out. So it's not exactly no contact, but it's just like this ridiculously insulated, indirect, distant sort of contact. But in a lot of cases, no contact at all. And there's definitely a push, like the energy is in motion to reach out, but it's an unhealed version. And again, they are resistant to the concept because they're looking to keep some kind of peace or keep something from some kind of boat from rocking. They're also not wanting to, like they've figured out, I've quoted Ned Flanders from The Simpsons Parents before when I said that, you know, they've tried nothing and they're all out of ideas. This is that kind of thing. Again, it's like them giving up after not having really tried their best in a situation. Or, you know, let me rephrase that, because it may not be that it isn't their best. It just may be that like you would have done better, or you did do better. So keep in mind that, you know, this is a situation where the two of you came across one another and you had very different reactions to the triggering that occurred between you. In some cases, we look at it and we realize maybe there's some overlap in your reactions, maybe some things that weren't so different, but there were a lot of differences. There was a lot of running on their part. And a lot of, in some cases, you chased for a moment and then realized, wait a minute, it's not supposed to be like this. And then in other cases, you chased for longer. I've noticed in this collective, there's less of a runner-chaser dynamic, like you hear about the runner and the chaser dynamic between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. The divine feminine often takes on the role of the chaser, if there is one. The divine masculine often takes on the role of the runner, if there is one. And there's almost always a runner in our collective. There's not always a chaser. In this case, though, this is interesting because it's like they're resistant to... they figured out what the problem is, that they're not happy with decisions they've made, that they've been following something that is not making up their happiness. It's not their happiness. And yet they're reluctant to make a change to that. This is why they're unhealed. Something hasn't happened. They haven't made the connection with their higher self, really, to the point where they're able to take advice when the advice is needed. And there are times when, like, it's just really, it's very helpful to have somebody there to say, listen, you know, almost like a conscience, you know, this is going to be problematic in the future if you go down X, Y, or Z path. They've been able to avoid this voice in the past, and now it's starting to break through, but they haven't really connected with it and built the relationship. They more try to ignore it. It's a new perspective that they haven't really gained. There's something that's going to happen here. And I get the sense that, I don't know that it happens this weekend, but I feel like we're more or less on top of the energy of when they start to become more aware of that. So that gets to the heart of the question that we're asking in particular for this weekend. Like, how aware are they of the impact of their actions, the impact of this in and out, the impact of the breadcrumbing in some cases, the inconsistent and confusing behavior, as my viewer put it, you know. Are they aware of this? Are they aware of the impact it's having, and do they care about it? So that's going to be our question. But really, we also want to understand what we need to know about this weekend. Um, that's an interesting combination of questions, because it's like, there's such a feeling of change and inflection point happening in the relationship right now. We saw that in yesterday's reading. We've been seeing that kind of coming up. So it's interesting to know, yeah, the Phoenix. The Phoenix, y'all. It's interesting to know if they're aware of what's happening. So I still don't know how aware they are of what's happening, but this weekend feels cathartic. Something happens, and it could be you're sitting there in pajamas, on your couch, cathartic. Because you don't ordinarily take the time to do that, or because you're sick and you have to do that, or, there could be some element of not actively getting up and doing things, but maybe there is. Maybe you go out and do something you've never done. But what I'm getting from this is that you have a cathartic experience through something that happens this weekend. You realize something, and it gives you a little bit more of the energy to move on. So one of the things that, and I mean move on in whatever sense, moving on to whatever next step. The thing that immediately pops up for me is I got a note from someone recently who, they mentioned that, they wanted this person to return, and this person finally did reach out, but it wasn't with a very, they were unhealed, like we see here, and like we've been seeing, and that they were just kind of tired from it. They were just exhausted. Didn't even, like, they had wanted this all this time, but then it was just exhausting when it happened. This is the type of energy that replenishes you, so that if you've got that I'm just going to be exhausted response to this person coming in, this is the sort of energy that actually refreshes and rejuvenates you. And it's like it's like refueling in midair too, because we saw in yesterday's energy, it's not exactly calming down. Then we've got the Venus energy, which is like the Empress. And this is more and more the way that, like, you've been coming across, is kind of with this growing Empress energy, which is exactly what you want, because the Empress is the divine feminine energy. So, with it being the divine feminine, there are certain aspects of you that are kind of governed by this, and these are the parts that are kind of coming into balance right now. There's a lot of intuition. There's a lot of that ability to kind of center your, not just your energy, but your emotions, to ground yourself, to be able to be vulnerable. So one of the things we saw in yesterday's reading, which was about, like, what do you need out of this? Not what your person needs, but what do you need from them out of this? There was an ability to kind of get past the pain from this relationship, and be able to be vulnerable again, and to be able to go all in. I think that's the way the words came out. So this is that growing ability. It's got that kind of element to it as well. This is neat. This is a neat feeling, because it's like, it's not all your problems get solved this weekend, but it's definitely, I used the term inflection point earlier, and I feel like more and more you guys are hitting some sort of inflection point. And again, we've seen it happening, growing. Ooh, I dropped one. Dropped a couple. You've got a 3 of Pentacles here. This is things falling into place. And falling into place fairly, like you couldn't have done it better, masterfully. In some cases, you're just getting lucky, but as a close friend of mine says, I'd rather be lucky than good any day. This is the sense of luck, for whatever that concept means to you. The star, though, once again, we come across a concept that means something a little different to different people. And it's the concept of destiny, but it's something being in the way of it. Okay, something is still delayed. Something is still in the way of ultimately your destiny. When you look at everything that would make the two of you happy together, that would make each of you happy individually, these are like 3 different paths. Your path, your person's path, and the together path. This is the together path, because we're looking at the soulmate union. And it's There's definitely a delay here, but with it coming out on top of the Venus card, which, like I said, is the equivalent of the Empress, more and more of the right ingredients are being added to make you move the direction that you need to go. So the things that you need are happening. So what I see here is there's still a blockage between the two of you, something that creates an impasse, something that is in the way, strong third party energy. But what's more glaring here, and not glaring in a bad way, it just shines brighter, is this Queen of Cups energy. So the Queen of Cups energy is this growing love, and it is being enabled by this Venus energy. So much is made of the energy of your person kind of bleeding over to you, and you having to deal with anger or their anxiety and frustration around their third party situation. Here you've got a lot of love coming through the connection. And so it just kind of, it's one of those things that feels like it's very much at home in the connection, because honestly it is. The two of you have more or less gotten in on the ground floor with one another, you know. There's a feeling of things coming more closely into balance. I don't know. It's like the edges of things starting to be made right. We've got the Three of Pentacles that came out over here that felt like things like falling into place. And I was reminded of this game that came out when I was a kid, and it was called Perfection. And so you set a timer, and there were all these places where shapes could be inserted into the game board. And so then, you know, you have all the pieces sitting there, and I think maybe you separate them between players. Anyway, you have to put all the pieces back in there before the timer runs out, and then the board jumps up and disturbs all the pieces. It kind of feels like, and this is, all the pieces had little pegs on them, like you had to carefully place them and orient them, so that was part of the challenge. This is like the whole game of Perfection just falling into place, which is highly unlikely, just gonna say. But that's kind of the energy of this weekend. Things are falling into place. It's gonna seem like that, but it's not really like that. It's really like you were right up against it and it just fell into place. But this is that balance and that things being made right. So this, I can't help but feel like this is happening within you, but you've still got this Princess of Pentacles in the reverse, still an incomplete lesson. And I feel like it's an incomplete lesson for you, but it's an incomplete lesson on both parts. We already know that your person, if they're heading your direction, is doing so in an unhealed fashion, but we also see they're off to the races. Like, they're off and running. It is not this is something that is already in motion. I don't see a Three of Wands on this table, but this is something that feels like, again, you've already got it kind of up against the edges, and now as things fall into place, it has this look of things effortlessly having gone right. But, you know, it's not effortless. It's something that you've been working in the right directions. Honestly, both of you have been doing some growing. You have been doing more conscious growing. And so that's where we get into more the awareness piece. With the Eight of Swords, there's kind of a bit of a mixed blessing happening here. Over the course of the weekend, we've seen some awareness from your person, but we've also seen that they kind of miss stuff. There is some kind of anxiety that gets reduced, or something that they decide is no longer a problem. So all of a sudden it frees them up to think differently. But it's a mixed blessing, because even though it seems like that would be a good thing, it encourages them to realize that they're way more locked up than they realized. And the impact of going after this Nine of Cups, that they are already swimming in the energy of not being happy about it. Like, they recognize the implications of that. That's not necessarily a more, so they become a lot more aware of their situation in this time frame. And that's kind of what we asked. You know, what do we need to know about this weekend, and how aware are they? So that's implications, but it's like things start to fall into place that were, again, right up against the edges. So they realize, okay, so wait, what else does that mean? What other connections are they going to make? And I wouldn't say your person's going to put everything together with regard to the fact that they haven't been giving you what, you know, you've been giving them energy-wise over the course of the relationship. But I also don't think that's a place where they're really missing information. I think it's a place where they haven't acted. They haven't done anything yet. There's still something that they're unable to let go of, unable to set free, but they think you are, they really feel like you have a lot of this already figured out, and that's part of what creates anxiety for them. So this is an honorable mention, but the way that they think about you, and they're kind of, we've seen in previous readings, they haven't necessarily been wanting to think about you, but they're being forced to a certain degree. They're being forced to think about you. There's a lot of the love energy that's flowing between the two of you. So the way that they are, I guess, becoming aware of the situation is also creating that a need for them to clench up, because it's like they can only do so much healing at one time, and they're holding on to some shred of, but I was right about this, right? You know, it's kind of got that feeling, or they're already realizing that whatever it is that they've devoted themselves to, essentially some job, some family, some ideals, is not working for them, and so they're kind of having to let go of some things. This is them being resistant. The Four of Pentacles is them being resistant to letting go of any more of this. It starts to feel like their identity at this point. And with the Knight of Cups here, this is a very forthcoming, communicative energy, but it's also one that is aware of appearances. A lot of charisma there, but kind of watch out. Just kind of watch out. All communication will have been heavily premeditated. We've got an Ace of Cups here, though. And the Ace of Cups, I'm like saving it for, I don't know if it's last. Yeah, it's last. Okay. I don't know until I pick up the cards until whether I'm supposed to get any more out. So this Ace of Cups is playing heavily off of this Queen of Cups, which is playing, bouncing off of this Empress card and this Queen of Pentacles. So there's an incredible amount of attraction. There's energy of motion. So this is somebody who's not inclined to, they've been super inclined to stay quiet or to hang back. They're, for whatever reason, this thing that we've noticed that has happened, they are inclined to now act. They're in motion. There's something about that. It has spiked new awareness within them, which ends up not being super comfortable, but we still see this Lover's card in reverse, which is really about them not having more freedom to interact or to change things with you, despite the fact that it seems like things are already just changing within the energy. With that Phoenix, that is something that we've seen things end. We've seen endings coming to certain elements of the cycle. This is the rebirth portion. So there's something that is happening in the now. And that's not always easy to tell. Past, present, future, there's kind of no real time, but it feels to me like it's you're asking specifically about this weekend, and I want to tell you about this weekend kind of vibe. But with this Ace of Cups, there's this edge of love that honestly feels like an abyss with no bottom, and that is terrifying to this person. So you may still see some limitations on how they want things to look. Certainly limitations coming with this Four of Pentacles. I think when we get into the extended, we're going to look a little bit more into how your person is processing this emotionally, and maybe what they are looking for from you. Let's get a start on that, though. Let's get a start on what they're looking for from you for this weekend, whether they are expecting good reception. So a lot of them, we know from, again, recent videos, are very concerned about how they are going to be received if they do reach out to you. So here we have this Knight of Cups again. We have this, this is a gutsy Knight of Cups. I'm going to be honest with you, but it still has this feeling of like doing what it is you really want to do, but it's still a drunk dial. 10 of Cups in reverse, Page of Swords in reverse. Yeah, watch out. Not that they don't mean it, just that they may not be able to maintain it. And we know that they'd be coming in kind of half-cocked from a healing perspective, and that may be impacting their ability to their staying power. You know, one of the elements of the question was, do they realize that this inconsistent, confusing behavior, do they realize the impact that it's having? Like, I don't think they truly do with the way that this feels. It seems like they talk themselves into some things, and they will get into a lot of self talk, which is part of what keeps them quiet. But the type of self talk that brings them back out of being quiet and back into the high portion of the inconsistent energy is pretty hard for them to resist, and hard maybe for you to resist too. Um, but ideally, you can tell they want you to be receptive, but you can also tell it's like, okay, so for a while there, every reading I did for like personal readings seemed like there was something about it that was like them wishing they could go back in time, wishing they could take the relationship back to some earlier time. And that's kind of the feeling that I have here with this 10 of Cups. But it's more of a, I wish we could stop time in one of the moments that is that is wonderful to me, instead of spending so much time in the down portion of things with the self-doubt. But with the Page of Swords in reverse, that's the part where their fear starts to really nag at them. So there's a strong, and I'm like, oh, you should be able to feel it. Like, there's no way you'd be able to. Well, you might. There's a sense that they're very concerned about how you're going to receive them if they were to reach out, if they were to ask about something, because it's like they feel like they need an excuse to reach out. You might feel like reaching out is a good enough reason to talk. They might feel like they need to have a better excuse for it. Oh, let's see here. I dropped a card, and I was like, it took me forever to bend over and pick it up. I'm sorry. This is really interesting, though. This feeling of, what does it remind me of? We've talked about them running up, especially with, like, it was the Knight of Swords in reverse. We've talked about them, like, running up the basement stairs away from you. But running up the basement stairs away from something that's in the dark and not even knowing what's chasing them. But this reminds me of them running away, and they keep turning around to make sure that you're there. So it's very disturbing when you stop chasing them. And for those of you who have significantly trailed back or stopped entirely and redirected yourselves, it is maddening to them. They keep turning around and seeing, well, are you still thinking of me? Are our energies still connected? Not that they would ask in those words, but we've got the Queen of Swords that came out, which just seemed like it was giving me an amen when I was talking about them, that sense of them running away but making sure that you're there. Okay, so we have the King of Wands in the upright, and then we have the Two of Wands, which is in the process of flipping itself around. So we're going to hold that one off. So what I saw was it came down like this. Maybe I'll have to go play it back, but it came back like this and kind of spun. That itself feels like a development. So, and it's an interesting one because it's not spinning the way that I want it to spin, or that you might want it to spin. The Queen of Swords is talking about them kind of making the decision that they make when they see the thing that they their response to seeing the thing that seems like it's too good to be true is often bailing out of the situation, ghosting out, becoming overwhelmed in some way. So the King of Wands, though, is the true ability to handle the overwhelm, honestly. And the thing is, with the King of Wands, if it stays balanced, it is truly the ability to manage that and to handle that and to be perfectly strong throughout. But if it becomes imbalanced, and this one, when it becomes imbalanced, gets arrogant, gets controlling. So you might see some elements of that. This is it's got heavy energy of a narcissist, sort of narcissistic tendencies. With the Two of Wands here, we even talked about it, I think yesterday. We've talked about the impasse between the two of you. That is something that they are creating as a situation that may not be as important to you. So if it's an age difference, they may be making more of a big deal out of it than you feel like it is. Or it's based on things that they were taught in childhood. It's based on some values that over time they've been looking at and considering how they are going to update their values. But that still feels like a very unconscious sort of feeling. So this one, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of put it in the orientation, approximately how it landed. I think that's kind of how it was. Might have been more sideways. But the Two of Wands, it feels like their values are in the process of changing because they're in the process of seeing more of what's going on. Again, with the increasing awareness of themselves, I still don't think that they have a strong awareness of the impact of their actions, though. They really talk themselves in and out of things and have some pretty strong and bizarre misconceptions about what your side might be in some cases. If they were willing to have the conversation with you, and some of them have been, you might be clearing some of that up, but they have a propensity for it. We do have the Knight of Swords, though. Speaking of the Knight of Swords, I like to see this one in the upright, and I like to see the Seven of Swords in the reverse like this, because this is like they want to be able to move forward rather than to move backwards, and they're trusting you to be able to do that. But I think this is heavily leveraged in that Queen of Pentacles energy and this Venus energy, because of what they think of you. However, they are noticing an increase in their peace, even with some of the things happening where they're feeling like they don't have, they don't exactly know how to get out from under whatever this is that they have given their lives to, or that they've allowed themselves to move toward. But they're starting to develop some kind of peace around that and a desire to go after the things that they think they want. Now, there's some confusion in their mind about that, but there's also some healing that's happening. The healing does not necessarily clear things up for them in the near term, but we've still got this energy of the Eight of Wands over here saying that there's like energy of motion, and it's like a train that doesn't want to stop. There's a lot more peace within them, but definitely not that feeling of I'm ready to go forward and just there's not an I feel like I'm ready to go forward and conquer kind of feeling. There's definitely more of a feeling of I'm ready to peek around the corner at it. You know, I mean, it's not as bold as this King of Wands would lead you to believe. However, the King of Wands it's like providing strength coming up from, and we see the strength over here. It's like it's growing right now, but we see the strength coming up from a significant deficit. So even with an incredible King of Wands sort of energy, there's a lot to overcome. The healing kind of takes some of their energy, I guess. I wanted to say it weakens them, but I don't want to say that because I don't want to imply that it's ultimately a bad thing, but it's taking some of their energy, and so it's a little bit less of their ability to come in with the right sort of behaviors. So you may notice that. Maybe we've gotten a little bit about their emotions and their awareness, certainly of kind of what they're doing. They're gaining some awareness this weekend, but there's still a lot they don't get. There's still a lot they're kind of resisting even becoming aware of. So there's that. And I feel like their changes, they're starting to become both more attracted to and more resistant to you. So let's look to see what they're likely to do, I think, when we get into the extended, what they're likely to do. And yeah, let's find out a little bit more about how they're feeling about it and how they're feeling about you. I think that sounds good. Sometimes the questions for the extended kind of crop up as we're working through this. This is a weekend reading, so we know kind of the time frame of our reading, but then we've guided it with an additional question, and it, of course, has just generated some more questions for us. But that's what we'll look into, what they're likely to do, how they're feeling, and whatever else wants to come up in that reading. So if you're looking to go to the extended, just scroll on down. It's in the description for this reading. And I'll hopefully see you there. Otherwise, I will see you in tomorrow's reading.